Hey, what's up, everyone? Morey Croson here, and today we're going to be going over the leg cycle. I think this is going to be a really important video to help athletes be able to just understand what they want to be doing with their legs as they're sprinting and just be able to hopefully get more clarity around your sprinting mechanics. I think I see a lot of people that right on the edge of being able to, I think, beat some of their maybe personal bests or really get into that elite level of sprinting and are struggling with this concept when it comes to the leg cycle we're going to be talking about here today, because we're going to be getting really focused into what the foot should be doing as it's coming off the ground and as it's coming through, and what the elite athletes are doing in comparison to what I see a lot of novice sprinters do, or guys that are maybe struggling to get into that elite level of sprinting. And so again, I think it's going to be a really important video. If you like the information, click that thumbs up down below, subscribe to the channel. And I would make the argument too, for people that are watching this, that a lot of you guys are not far away from being an elite level sprinter and just need to make a little bit of some mechanical adjustments and be able to, with those mechanical adjustments, and apply them over a period of time and really be able to just get more awareness around what you're doing, both as the foot's striking the ground as well as the foot's transitioning off the ground, to really make it so you could separate yourself in terms of what are the things that you're doing in comparison to the best athletes. And with this concept, so we have a 60 meter here. We're going to be really looking specifically at Noah Lyles, or more specifically at Noah Lyles. But really, if we zoom out here, all these guys are doing the same thing. And what that is as they're coming through, this is obviously, a world-class event, guys that are all really fast. What they're all doing is, as their foot's coming through, they're driving that knee straight in and they're maintaining that foot right underneath the hip. And this is something that is built from the start. Okay, so we have Christoph here on the left. I usually don't say his last name right, so I'm just going to go with Christoph. And we can see that as he's coming through, even at this point, he's doing a good job of getting his knees to come right up and through. And so just to give you an idea too of what you want to avoid is, and I'm just going to use I recently just did a video on Rocky Balboa, or really movie scenes, and we're going to look at Rocky Balboa when he's running, so you guys can see what is that we're talking about here. So you can see with his running form as he's coming through, notice with this left foot that as he's coming around, see how his foot comes around like that? That ends up being a action that is caused by not having good dorsiflexion as that foot's coming off the ground, right? So as soon as you're toeing off here, and it could really actually be from two things, but the main thing is, as people are toeing off, they don't get back into good dorsiflexion. And so now if you're in more of like a everted position within the foot, or an inverted position within the foot, then it allows you to more come around with that foot. And notice how, again, we'll go to Noah Lyles, notice how he's coming straight through, right? He's not coming around with the foot. He's driving that foot right underneath. And you could see how his hip is, or his foot is really right underneath like the pelvis, where again, a lot of the guys that are just not as fast, they're going to have that foot coming around more towards like the outside part of the hip. And I see this a lot. This isn't a uncommon thing, but this is something that is common within people that are fast, but not super elite with their speed. Another common thing is that I'll just see like the legs will be too wide. I recently just did a breakdown, and this was a big reason why I decided to really do this, is because this athlete was struggling with it. And I see it a lot. But we could see, again, the position within the leg, how the knee is really outside. This one, he's doing a better job. His foot's more right underneath him, which is good. But notice now with Noah Lyles, like as his leg's coming through, how tight his knee is, right? So he's almost coming in, almost like he's adducting, right? Adducting is when that knee's coming in towards your pelvis, or in towards the middle part of your body. So you can see how he is really coming inwards more as that leg's coming up and through. And again, this is going to be a form of two different things. One is, how are we transitioning off the ground? Notice how we're getting a push off where the outside part of the foot ends up being more of what's the last part leaving the ground, right? He's more on the outside part of the foot here, as in comparison to Christoph, where he's pushing off much more of like the inside part of the leg. So he's getting more into inter-rotation. So now we can see as that foot's leaving, he's immediately coming right through. Again, notice how close his knees are as he's going through the transition phase, where when you push off more of the outside, notice how that knee is going more to the outside, foot is coming more across as we're going through that transition. And so those, again, end up being the two main problems, right? One is pushing off too much on the outside part of the foot, I think is what makes it so now you end up getting that knee to be too wide. Or when you see what we saw with like Sylvester Stallone when he has like in that Rocky movie when he's running, typically that is caused by too much internal rotation. So we can see that as Christoph's pushing off here, he ends up pushing himself forward. Well, I'll see people that will go into so much internal rotation within their leg that now that foot ends up spinning around, right? Because you're trying to almost twist off that back foot. You could, if you're on one foot, if you just think about almost twisting your leg, you'll be able to feel it. And that's what ends up happening, is that it ends up being more of a twist in comparison to a push. And that's what you really want to be able to do here to be able to get a great leg cycle, is have an effective push off, really pushing that foot back or pushing that toe back as your foot's leaving the ground, and then immediately getting right into a knee drive. Obviously, when you're a little bit earlier on in the race, we're going to have not as much height within the foot, where later on, we're going to be able to get that foot. You can see with him, he has that foot really high, almost up behind his butt as he's transitioning off the ground. But we're still seeing a very similar action where the foot is coming off the ground, or is like pushing off the ground, and then we're seeing immediate driving of the knee. And again, you know, this leg almost wants to get into like an internally rotated position, right? So if the more outside your knee is, now we're going to be talking about things like abduction or external rotation. That knee going outside or away is really more an externally rotated position within the hip, where when that knee is inside, now we're going to be talking about, one is hip flexion, but we're also talking about a adduction, right? Adduction is again coming inwards with the legs, as well as like more of an internally rotated position. So I think a lot of times people are struggling with their running because of a lack of internal rotation of the hip, because of how much internal rotation is truly needed to be able to, one, push off, because you can even see with him, he's getting internal rotation here as he's pushing off, and then he's maintaining that as he's coming through with the leg. And like right here, this is all internally rotated position. Now, if you're stiff in your low back, this is why I think that squats aren't great for you as a sprinter, is because if you're stiff in that low back, it really limits what type of internal rotation you can achieve, and it also limits what type of hip flexion you could achieve. Both those things end up typically becoming more limited with large amounts of squats, right? Unless you have the right biomechanics within the hips, which a lot of sprinters don't. There's some people that do, where you're able to effectively utilize your hip flexors to stabilize the pelvis as you're going through the full squat. But there's a lot of athletes, and I think there's more information coming out about this, that are really stiff within their hips and therefore are not able to get the right type of depth, and then are taking on a lot of the load of the squat more through like the low back area, which is causing a detriment to their sprinting performance, because now it becomes more of a stiffness in the low back type of a movement or exercise, as opposed to strengthening the legs, which is really the main goal there. So make sure that you're not doing that when you're going through your squat. That's why I'm bringing up that information, obviously. And then when we're going through the front side here, so most of that information was the backside. The backside of your sprinting is going to be when your foot is even with the hip or behind. So basically this whole time, so right here would be even. All this part ends up being the backside mechanics until he gets his foot back to even. And now as he's coming forward, we're looking still, remember, at the right leg here. Now we're going into the front side mechanics. So what's important about the front side mechanics is maintaining great dorsiflexion within the foot, which means that as this legs come through, I mean, we want to be able to, one, get that knee all the way up, and we don't want that foot to end up becoming too far back behind. So I see a lot of people that as their knees coming up, their foot will end up being so far back behind their hip, they don't have time to really get a good reach with that leg. What's important is as we get to this max knee flexion, we don't want to end up having this foot too far back behind, so then we don't have the opportunity to get here, right? And notice, like, as he's here, he has the foot up, he's got the knee all the way extended, and now from here, regardless of if he's pulling the leg back or reaching down, he ends up landing with his body more towards the front part of the foot, and with the foot basically right underneath the hip. Okay, there's a couple different ways we could achieve that. We could achieve that by pushing those hips up and really kind of reaching downwards towards the ground. So we're creating this natural kind of stretch through the body, or you could achieve that by creating a pull within that foot to make it so now you're landing with the foot underneath your body. I think that's like the only two ways to be able to achieve it, but I do think there are two different ways to be able to get to this position. I don't know exactly which ones Noah Lyles is really concentrating on here, but we could see again that we have to be able to get into that dorsiflexion position. So again, we can see how high his foot is here. This is coming off the ground. So he's pushing off the ground. He gets that foot nice and high back behind him. He's driving that knee through. As he drives the knee through, he's getting into dorsiflexion, or has already gotten into dorsiflexion and within the ankle, right? Dorsiflexion is when we're bringing that foot up towards the shin. And then from here, he's very quick to get that foot right underneath the knee. Okay, and really past the knee, and therefore he's able to then extend and then push off. And I see people that, I'll just cue them, like, when your foot comes off the ground here, when you're pushing that foot off the ground, and this is why I think the push is important. You want to be thinking about the push because this knee has to bend very quickly. Like sometimes you just got to think about bending that knee faster, so then we can get that foot through and get the knee through, so then we have the time to be able to have the front side mechanics. Sometimes people, I just don't, when you can kind of break it down and compartmentalize it, now you could really isolate, okay, I need to really bend that knee quickly. And this is why I think that working both butt kicks as well as high knee butt kicks is where we're getting the foot more right underneath you, are both really important to be able to help in understanding how fast we want to be able to really flex that knee, and how to be able to flex that knee faster to make it so you could improve your speed and be able to, again, improve your front side mechanics. One of the key concepts that we talk about with people is that you really want to have two, if we look at the whole time period of the leg cycle, typically people are going to be spending about 0.3 seconds of time within the foot's off the ground, right? Sometimes it'll be 3-3. Let's say it's 3-3. Well, 0.2 of that time will be with the foot out in front. 0.13 will be with the foot back behind. So I'm always telling people, like, you want to eliminate backside mechanics the best that you can and really concentrate on being able to create more frontside mechanics, so more time in the front side, because of how much time is typically wasted, again, especially in novice sprinters, with their foot back behind them. And so in order to eliminate that, then we don't necessarily want to shorten our stride, right? We want to keep the same stride length. That's one of the things that stands out with Noah Lyles. He has such great stride length, especially for his size, for his height, but he's not wasting a lot of time with his foot back behind. He's very quick to get his knee up, to get his foot up and get his leg back through, and therefore is able to run fast. So just because you have a long stride, Usain Bolt, his was 0.36. Right? And he was probably about 0.22 front side and about 0.14 backside. Obviously, from one to the other, there's not going to be a huge difference, but there's about 1/10 of a second difference between the front side and the backside. And that's what's important, is understanding how can I get to that position and how do I maximize my foot strike. And this all comes into different stages, right? So first, we have to be able to understand that when the foot is coming off the ground, we want to be able to get into, and I've worked with so many athletes now that I can kind of understand exactly what are the stages here. So when this foot's coming off the ground, we want to be able to get into this position, right? So at toe off, we need that to be happening, right? People need to be able to understand that. Number two is we have to understand the height of the foot, right? Being able to get that foot up to the height of the butt, right? That's going to be number two, because not everybody gets these things. Number three is we have to be fast with our foot contact time. We can't let our heel get stuck on the ground, because typically once people start to get high with the foot, then they'll end up taking too much time with their foot on the ground because they're concentrating on lifting up, where really it wants to be a push with the foot, not a lift, which is, if you're lifting, then you're spending too much time on the ground. If you're pushing, then you're going to have faster foot contact time and you're going to have a more effective leg cycle. And then from the push, you want to immediately, this is number four, the fourth part of being able to develop this effective turnover, is you want to get immediately into this dorsiflexion position. So get that foot through, so now you can get into dorsiflexion as fast as you can, or getting that foot out in front of your knee, right? So typically I'll show people, like, they'll be stuck with their foot right underneath their knee, where you want to get their foot out in front of the knee. And then number five would be really being able to maximize the height within the foot, right? Or within the toe. So being able to improve how high you're getting. And then number six would be improving the pull. Okay, so that would be like the 6 stages of being able to improve within the leg cycle, depending on where you're at with it. There's some people that are very early on in terms of how their knee height wants to be, or foot height wants to be, or their leg cycle. Then you'd want to be able to start off with more of those, the beginning beginning level, and then as time goes on, you can kind of progress and be able to make improvements from there. But this is just like a thing about the leg cycle, right? Like there's more we can go into your arm swing, there's more we can go into your foot contact time. Then we also want to be able to break this down within the start, within the drive phase, within the top end speed. And I like to get really specific into the time, right? Like I said, the whole thing with the 0.2 of a second, 1/10 of a second, like how much time are we spending off the ground? How much time are we spending on the ground? How many steps are we taking? All these things are important to understand. Where are you on the development of your speed? And this is all stuff that we do within the speed program. So obviously want to be able to give you guys more information to be able to make an educated decision on your speed program. If that's something that you want to be able to do, get more professional coaching, get a more professional understanding of what it is that you need to work on, we'll be able to handle all that stuff for you within our speed program. You can check that in the description down below. But yeah, thanks for watching here, guys. I'm going to call it at the end. We're about 15, 16 minutes into this. So I figured you guys have gotten a lot of information. If you did and you enjoyed the video, like, subscribe. We have a lot of things like this on the YouTube page or within our playlist. So check that out if this is the first video that you watched of us. But yeah, hope this helps. I think this should be a very effective video or a very helpful video for anybody that is a sprinter looking to improve their leg cycle, looking to improve their speed. Again, thanks for watching. We'll talk to you soon.